Abraham Lincoln's idea that the government must be of the people, by the people, and for the people. Democracy gives the ultimate authority to the people to elect their own representatives into the parliament to fight for their own causes and also to fight for the betterment of the country. Hence, I strongly believe that transparent election is the ultimate way to achieve this. A very pleasant evening I bid to all. Thank you for coming for my today's talk, which is about bersih. Bersih is a Malay word, so it means clean in English. So today, it is a struggle of Malaysians to have free and fair elections in Malaysia. So before I begin, let me introduce to you. These are the points that I would like to talk about so that you have a clear understanding about what the issue is all about. Firstly, I will give a brief description about Malaysian politics. Second, electoral fraud. Third, the movement of bersih, how it was initiated and how people reacted. Fourth, 8 demands of bersih. What bersih demands the government and the election commission to do before the general election. Fifth, responses either from the public, government, election commission, and other parties. And last but not least, hopes for Malaysians. So, let me begin by introducing to Malaysian politics to you guys. Basically, I would say that Malaysian politics is politically quite segregated. So, the Malays tend to vote for the Malay candidates, the Chinese tend to vote for the Chinese candidates, and also the Indians tend to vote for the Indian candidates. And it is obvious in rural areas, but it is not obvious in urban areas. So, the ruling government is the BERSIH National, or in English, National Front. In today's talk, I will just call BN. So it comprises of 13 component parties, and the key players are UMNO, United Malays National Organization, MCA, Malaysian Chinese Association, and also MIC, Malaysian Indian Congress. So since the past 57 years, BN has ruled the country. So in the first general election, 1955, until today. Whereas the opposition coalition, well, the recent progress is they form Pakatan Rakyat, or People's Alliance, or it is known as PR. So PR comprises of PKR, People's Justice Party, PAS, Malaysian Islamic Party, and also DAP, Democratic Action Party. So in 2008 election, the 12th general election, the opposition coalition made a victory by denying 2/3 majority of BN in the parliament by gaining 82 parliamentary seats, and also they gained 5 seats in Peninsular Malaysia. So the second thing I would like to discuss about, which is the main issue of today's talk, is about electoral fraud that was happening and still happening until today. So an academic named Dr. Ong Kian Meng made a study. It was called Merak Project. So he found out very alarming evidence and shocking facts about our electoral system in Malaysia. For example, 65,455 foreigners in the electoral roll. This is very unacceptable because at the same time, Malaysians overseas, over 1 million Malaysians overseas are denied their rights to vote through postal voting. So how come that all these foreigners, the Bangladeshis, the Indonesians, the Burmese are given their right to vote in Malaysia when they do not know anything about the country? Also, 65,000 voters aged 85 years old and older. So these are the shocking facts that he got. So, well, Malaysia's electoral fraud by numbers. Example, 90% of ballots cast through Malaysia's postal voting system is believed to favor the ruling BN. And not only that, 1,000 more voters are believed to be aged more than 100 years old, and the oldest one is believed to be born in 1853. Not only that, they also admitted that there are 42,000 voters who are, well, they can't verify the status, whether they are still alive or whether they are still dead, or whether they are Malaysians or non-Malaysians. So this is a problem that we are having. So due to what I mentioned earlier, all the electoral fraud that we are having, Therefore, people realized that we need to do something. This is the struggle of the people. And they initiated BERSIH. BERSIH is a non-partisan organization, and it actually asked to negotiate with all parties regardless of ideology in the country. So they negotiated with the government, with the opposition, with the public, with the election commission, and also with the NGOs. And it started by Joint Action Committee for Electoral Reform in November 2006. And up until today, there are 84 endorsees of BERSIH. And the core chairperson of BERSIH is Ambiga Srinivasan, and also another core chairperson is A. Samad Said, the national poet. So let me explain to you about the 8 demands that BERSIH asked from the Election Commission and also the government. There is no clear distinction between Election Commission and the government in Malaysia, because it seems that they work hand in hand, and Election Commission is not independent enough and is heavily influenced by the government. So the first demand is clean the electoral roll. Do you know what happened? In 2000, there was an election in Malaysian Borneo, a state called Sabah, in the Likas election. So the court found out that there were 4,127 non-Malaysians voting in the election. And do you know what happened after that? In 2002, the government legislated Section 9A, which disallowed people to question the election results. So which means that there is a possibility that people or the government would just cheat during the election. And not only that, there is a sudden increase of number of voters, especially in the constituencies where the opposition had won. So the second demand is reform postal ballot. As I mentioned earlier, 1 million Malaysians overseas, just like me, for example, are disenfranchised to vote, and we are denied our rights to vote. In Malaysia, the Sibu by-election, so there was a postal ballot, and then the results were out. And you know that there are 39 postal ballots more than initially were issued. So this is very alarming. And not only that, the army personnel, some of them actually came forward and testified that they had been ordered to vote on behalf of their colleagues. So, for example, one of the MP from an independent MP, he thought he was losing. So that's why he's asking from the government to open an army camp in his constituency so that he could gain more votes during the election. The third demand is use indelible ink. This is to ensure that there is no multiple voting in Malaysia. The problem here is before the 12th January election in 2008, the Election Commission had agreed to use the indelible ink. However, a few days before the election, they decided not to use it for the reason that they gave, that people might abuse the indelible ink. And not only that, we want to ensure that there is no multiple voting, because according to the National Registration Department, there are 3.1 million voters who are not registered in their constituencies. What I'm saying is, they are supposed to be voting in different constituencies, however, they voted in different constituencies. And for your information, the National Registration Department already informed the Election Commission in 2002, but until today, the Election Commission has not cleaned up the electoral roll. So that means there's a possibility of 3.1 million voters voting in different constituencies. And this indelible ink is to ensure that there is no multiple voting in different constituencies. Apart from that, 21 days of campaigning and also of the free access of media, I think these demands are related, because I think there is no free access to media for both parties in Malaysia. So the mainstream media especially is controlled by the government. I'm not saying that I support which party, whether opposition or government, but I think it is a right, especially in a democratic country, to have free access to media. Both the government and the opposition have the right to actually explain to the people about the agenda and their manifesto during the elections. Number 6 is strengthen public institutions. What is happening in Malaysia now is the lack of independence, especially the Election Commission. To my surprise, and to every Malaysian's surprise, the Election Commission Chairman, Tan Sri Abdul Aziz Muhammad Yusof, and also his deputy are UMNO members. And when the opposition revealed about this issue, about their membership in UMNO, they said they are not active members. So the issue here is not whether you are an active member or whether you are an active member. The issue here is about the independence. How can you become independent when you are part of political organization? So you have the tendency to be biased towards one political party that you join. The seventh demand is to stop corruption. This is prevalent during the election because especially in rural areas, in Malaysian Borneo, for example, Sabah and Sarawak, most of them live in rural areas. And the politicians especially would go there and, well, just practice money politics and give money to them to gain votes. The last one is stop dirty politics. So in Malaysia, the problem here is compared to Australia. In Australia, the politicians discuss about ideas, policies, and issues. But in Malaysia, we are more focusing on discussing about petty issues, nitty-gritty things. For example, whether this opposition leader is having a sex scandal. It is true, the mainstream media on the front page would reveal about the sex scandal of the opposition leader. Well, let's say it was in 1998, it was about him having him sodomized one guy. And in recent years, the media would reveal that the opposition leader had a sex with Chinese prostitute. And not only that, not only the opposition leader, but also the Prime Minister, Najib Razak, is also accused by the media of having an affair with a Mongolian model. So all these things are being discussed in Malaysian politics instead of discussing about ideas and policies to improve the country. So this is the fact that I got about the foreigners voting in Malaysia. So Sheikh Hasina also mentioned she thanked the Malaysian government because they were given more than citizenships from Malaysian government. In fact, they now have been given a right to be a voter in upcoming Malaysians general election. Another highly placed source, she mentioned that the Bangladeshi workers may easily convert Malaysian citizenship with condition to vote for party that represents the government in power. So this is an obvious proof that there is no clean and fair election. The Bangladeshi workers are given citizenships. And it's true that they revealed, even the Indonesian workers, they were given temporary identity card. So because in Malaysia we use identity card for voting, for example, so they were given temporary citizenship just for the election to vote for the government. And also, this one we got from the Election Commission website. So we can just check. You can just check about our status of being a voter. So that is name. And I don't know what kind of symbol is that, but that is name. So maybe this person, his name or her name is that dot. So, and another thing, last year, I tried by myself checking the website, and I entered one identity card number, and what I found out was this woman was born in 1853. So it is very alarming and it is very funny to have these kind of facts. Okay, there's also criticism towards BERSIH because some of the demands, the 8 demands that BERSIH asked from the government and also the Election Commission cannot be fulfilled by the EC. For example, strengthen the public institutions, free access to media, stop corruption, and dirty politics. But what I suppose that BERSIH is demanding the Election Commission to do all these things because there's no other way, there's no alternative to be heard by the government, because all this while and on all the electoral fraud has been happening since long time ago until today, and nothing has been done. So BERSIH is taking the initiative to make sure the Election Commission is aware of this situation, and maybe the Election Commission would try to make the government to do reform in the election in the electoral role. So what are the measures taken by BERSIH? As I mentioned earlier, BERSIH had negotiations and talks with different parties. So after the public rally, the second public rally, the government decided to form PSC, Parliamentary Select Committee. So they had the opposition leaders, they had BN MPs, they also had BERSIH people in the Parliamentary Select Committee. However, Parliamentary Select Committee has failed to give a guarantee to the people that the next general election would be the freest and also the fairest. So, and the 8 demands cannot be fulfilled before the general election. And before the formation of Parliamentary Select Committee, BERSIH decided to have public rally. So the first public rally was held in 2007. It was the biggest rally in 10 years' time in Malaysia. So of course, they faced with police brutality. After that, they also had negotiation and talks with the government and the election commission, and nothing has been done. So in 2011, 11th of July 2011, they had another rally, BERSIH 2.0. So BERSIH went global in 30 international cities, including in Canberra, in Perth, in London, in Tokyo, in other cities in America, and so on. And during BERSIH 2.0, it was declared as an illegal rally. So even the students in Australia, I also received an email by the government saying not to go to the rally, and they said if you go, we will cooperate with the Australian authorities to take action against you. This is so funny because what I know for the fact that Australia guarantees the freedom of speech and the freedom of assembly in Malaysia. Even actually Malaysia does guarantee the freedom of assembly, the freedom of speech, and also the freedom of association. However, there is no enforcement towards this kind of law. This is a problem in Malaysia. We have good laws, but there's no good enforcement. So, as I mentioned earlier, after BERSIH 2, they formed PSC, and nothing has been done until today. So, BERSIH decided to have BERSIH 3.0. It was sit-in rally, and for the global BERSIH, it was held in 71 cities in 29 countries. So this is actually the shirt, the BERSIH 3.0 shirt that I'm wearing. So if I was in Malaysia during BERSIH 2.0, I would be arrested for no reason just because of wearing this shirt. And people who wore yellow shirt were also being arrested. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, they faced with police brutality. If you just YouTube, then you can find many videos on how the police acted or reacted towards BERSIH protesters. So these are the responses by the government and also the rakyat. Rakyat is a Malay word, it means the public or the people. Okay, so the government actually accused of BERSIH of trying to topple the government. So the government also accuses BERSIH as a political tool by the opposition to topple the government and gain power. Not only that, they also claim that this is a foreign conspiracy and also non-Malay conspiracy to take over Malaysia. And Ambika Srinivasan, the former bar counsel, was also accused as the agent, as a Jewish agent and also as an American agent. So the government actually played a sentiment with people about this kind of issue. So people were diverted from the real issues. People in rural areas especially, they were deceived by this kind of racial card played by the government. And not only that, the media was censored and also the media gave negative reports on BERSIH. Let me show you the censorship of media, not only for the Malaysian media, but also with the international media. So this is from BBC.
This policeman ran the gauntlet of protesters.
They fired a shot at us, and then instead of saying sorry, we know it was an accidental shot, they shot some more. Okay, we was about to talk and make peace, negotiate, and they shot at us.
It had all started amicably enough, with tens of thousands packed into the city's main square. They even cheered the police as they arrived. Activists fear that imminent elections may be rigged in favour of the ruling coalition, which has held power for over 50 years.
I'm here to see that we have free and fair elections. That's all. We want the election commission to be independent and clean. At the moment, it is not clean. Okay, so I have to stand here because this is a day of destiny formulations.
The government insists the concerns are exaggerated and that it's reforming the voting system. It's not entirely clear how the violence started, but after the protest was declared a success and people began to go home, the barriers were breached and the authorities fired tear gas at the crowds.
So, yeah, you've seen how the media, the BBC, was censored by the government. So how the Rakyat responded towards BERSIH? So what BERSIH demands is for EC to resign because we do not have faith and we do not trust EC to be independent because of the reasons I mentioned earlier. And also, Ambika Srinivasan asked for international observers. Recently, it was last week, she came here to meet the Australian MPs to ask them to come to Malaysia during the 13th January election, which is expected to be held next year. But BOPCA decided not to send observers unless the Malaysian government requests for it. Fair enough, but then it is important for Malaysia to have international observers, and I do not know why actually during the election in Thailand and also in Burma, Malaysia sent its observers to go and see the election over there when we are still having and struggling with our electoral system. And not only that, the Rakyat wants to be heard by the government because I think the most important thing about BERSIH, it ends the racial divisions among Malaysians. As I mentioned earlier, in Malaysia, like even previously, we actually tend to vote, the Malays tend to vote for Malay candidates and so on. But during BERSIH, we could see that the solidarity and the unity amongst Malaysians in having transparent election. So you could see, it was so obvious during the protests especially, when they were shot with tear gas and they faced with police brutality, they were playing cat and mouse game, how Malays, Chinese and Indians helped each other during the protests. And I think the brutality came from the police because in KL the protesters faced with police brutality. However, in other cities, in capital states, in other states in Malaysia, it was very peaceful without police or without army personnel. So it showed that the problem actually is initiated by the public authorities when they decided not to give the right of the people to assemble. So let me show you about how the situation was during the rally. So this was in KL. Almost 250,000 people protested in KL alone. 50,000 in other places. So you could see Chinese, Malays and Indians and other races were united. So I would call it as the beginning of Kebangkitan Rakyat, or in English it is called as the rise of the people. So the people want to be heard by the government and do not want this problem to end. Okay, what BERSIH does as an effective measure is to form Tindak and Jom Pantau. So these organizations are actually to make Malaysians to get involved in observing the electoral system in Malaysia. So they are being trained on how to detect if there is any electoral fraud during the election. So this is the map of different locations where BERSIH was held, but I think actually it is more than this because It was also held in Egypt and in some other countries around the world. So last but not least, hopes for Malaysians. What the people want, what the rakyat want, is to have clean and fair election for the 13th general election, which is expected to be held next year. So the problem is, we already demanded all the 8 demands from the government and the election commission long time ago. Until today, they fail to give a guarantee that this election, they will fulfill all the 8 demands. So there's a possibility, based on the facts that I gave you and I explained to you earlier, there's a possibility that the votes will be manipulated by the ruling party, BERSIH 4. So, because of the disappointment of the progress, so the opposition party actually declared there would be another BERSIH 4.0, which is going to be held on 3rd of November, this coming 3rd of November. So I think the bigger picture of this problem is about to have a mature democracy. Because in Malaysia, as what I mentioned earlier, the government accuses BERSIH as a political tool by the opposition and as a conspiracy by the non-Malays, by the non-Muslims to take over the country. So there's no mature democracy in Malaysia where we discuss ideas. So I would like to quote you about an interesting quote by one of the deputy ministers in the government. So he is a progressive leader, so it is a good thing. He said that bringing down the government is democratic, bringing down the country is unpatriotic. So the government has failed to have a clear distinction between bringing down the government and bringing down the country. So it seems like they are playing with the issue of BERSIH, or the protesters are trying to make a chaotic situation in Malaysia. If you have a mature democracy, you actually have the right to bring down the government because you think the government has no longer effective in bringing the betterment for the country. So this is the bigger picture that Malaysians have to think about, and they have to change their mindsets, especially our members of parliament. So what I think that we use our right, the government might use their might, but ultimately right will prevail. Thank you.